This is huge news. A blockbuster trade scenario that would send Kevin Durant back to Golden State and a bunch of young players and draft capital back to the Phoenix Suns. It is a wild trade scenario, and we are going to break it down for you guys here on Suns Digest. My name is CJ Pierre, and I'm going to get into it with you guys. First, before we do all that and get into this crazy trade scenario, we noticed that there's 92% of you guys who are watching our videos. That's great. Thank you guys so much. But you haven't subscribed to the channel. If you want to keep up with all the latest rumors, the news, trade speculation like we're going to get into today, and you want to keep up to date with everything that's going on with the Phoenix Suns during this wild offseason, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can keep up with all the things that we got cooking for you. So let's get right into it. A potential trade scenario involving Kevin Durant. It is a 3-team trade proposal that would send Kevin Durant back to the Golden State Warriors, a reuniting, if you will. As we know, Kevin Durant won 2 NBA championships after he joined the Golden State Warriors. He was in Golden State for 3 years, 3 NBA Finals appearances. There was that last one where he eventually tore his Achilles tendon against the Toronto Raptors, and the Warriors went on to lose. But Kevin Durant joining Steph Curry, joining Klay Thompson, joining Draymond Green, we all know that that was a historic team that put together some magic for those years. And now with Kevin Durant in Phoenix and Phoenix trying to adjust their roster, the Bleacher Report's Andy Bailey proposing a 3-team trade that would land Kevin Durant with the Golden State Warriors, the reunion of reunions of all sorts. Now, again, this is a 3-team trade that not only involves the Golden State Warriors and the Phoenix Suns, but it would also bring in the Orlando Magic. So now we're going to get into this potential trade and just kind of look at what the options are and take a look at what the Suns might be getting back in this trade. So in this trade scenario that Andy's reporting or proposing, again, remember, this is all speculation. There's no reporting here. This is all just trade scenarios, okay? The Suns would get back Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Podziemski, Kevin Looney from the Golden State Warriors, and Caleb Houston, who is a player for the Orlando Magic. Now, the Suns would also get a 2025 first-round pick from Orlando via the Denver Nuggets, a 2026 first-round pick from Golden State, and a 2028 first-round pick from Golden State. Now, of course, in that trade, they would end up losing Kevin Durant and a 2028 second-round pick from Boston. Now, that is a lot of stuff coming back from Phoenix. We'll get into all that in terms of the Phoenix Suns return in a little bit. But now let's take a look at what the Warriors would receive. Now, they would get Kevin Durant, obviously, from the Phoenix Suns, and then Jet Howard, another young player on the Orlando Magic. Now, of course, in this trade possibility, the Suns would lose Chris Paul, someone who's making $30 million this coming season on an expiring contract, Kuminga, Podziemski, Kevon Looney. They'd also lose Gary Payton II, and obviously those 2 first-round picks that we talked about earlier. Now, when we bring in the Orlando Magic and we talk about what they would get in return, and the fact that they would even just be a part of this deal and taking on a contract like Chris Paul's in this situation, they would get Chris Paul, they would get Gary Payton II, and they'd also get that Suns second-round pick in 2028. But they would also lose, as we mentioned, Jet Howard, Caleb Houston, and a 2025 first-round pick via Denver. Now, that's a lot. That's a lot to break down. That's a lot to go into. It's a 3-team trade. These things can get complicated, and we'll get into whether or not that would work money-wise in a little bit. But first, let's just look into the possibility of what this could look for these new-look Suns in this trade scenarios. Losing Kevin Durant, being the only player that the Suns will give up, and getting back so much other talent. Kevon Looney, Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Podziemski, and Caleb Houston. Now, keep in mind, in terms of the salary cap implications of a trade like this, you have to remember, with the Suns being a second-neighbor team, they're not able to make the same kind of trades that you would think. So that's why a 3-team trade like this, is something that they might want to think about. Now, in return, they would get Kevon Looney, an expiring contract at $8 million. They would also get Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Podziemski, and Caleb Houston. Now, this is a trade that the Suns technically are allowed to make as a second-neighbor team. They can't combine a bunch of players to get one other player, but they can use one contract to get a bunch of talent in return. And in this particular scenario, that would be Kevin Durant. And that'd be the one player They get a bunch of capital in return. So let's take a look at this particular trade and see the big landing point in terms of what the Suns could use is a player like Jonathan Kuminga. He'd be kind of like that key piece. He was an emerging player over the course of the season with Golden State. He had his career year, his best season yet, averaging 16 points per game, 4.8 rebounds per game, and 2 assists per game. Now he's entering his fourth season in the NBA. So again, he's still a very young player, but he's steadily improved. And again, like I mentioned, last season, his breakout year, really becoming a solid member of the rotation, going from 9.9 points per game to 16 points per game. That's a huge jump over the course of 1 year for a player. And for a player who's young and athletic like Kuminga is and very dynamic on the defensive end, that's something that the Suns could be interested in. Another key piece in this trade could be Brandon Podziemski. Now, he was a reserve player for the Golden State Warriors, but he filled in a lot of gaps that were left, particularly with the kind of decline of Klay Thompson in Golden State. In his rookie season, he averaged 9.2 points per game and almost 6 rebounds per game. Now, and that's in limited time, limited minutes. Podziemski, he's a kind of a spark plug. He's a solid shooter. He's not afraid to attack the basket. He's a good ball handler. He's got a lot of skills and a lot of traits, something that, the Suns may need, particularly if it was going to be coming from a reserve player off the bench. Now, when you look at the pieces that the Suns are getting back and then they're giving up Kevin Durant, you have to really think, is that worth it? Is that something that the Suns would want, getting these players in return? We didn't talk too much about Kevon Looney or Caleb Houston, but they're just solid pieces. Kevon Looney could be a backup role. Caleb Houston could be a depth player. Honestly, I kind of like it for the Suns. Like, yeah, you're losing Kevin Durant. You're losing one of the top 10 players in the NBA, but you're getting a ton of young talent, a ton of young players. You're getting Kevon Looney's expiring contract, and then you're getting more draft capital. Like, it's kind of a no-brainer. So, is this trade even possible? Is this something that the Suns can actually do? Obviously, the Suns, like I said, Suns, second apron team. So many, hoops that they're going to have to jump through to try and remake this roster and make it competitive again. Now, we all know that Matt Ishbia, James Jones, they've kind of come out and said that the big three is staying together. That's what they're saying. That's what they're telling us. We don't know exactly what's going behind the scenes. We don't know if there's going to be an offer that they can't refuse. And they have a lot of holes still, not a lot of flexibility. So, yeah, maybe. We did a trade machine using fanspo.com to see how this would work money-wise, given where the Magic and the Warriors are cap-wise as well. This trade, money-wise, would work. It would be a success. Now, that's crazy to think, given all of the second apron talk that we've been doing. The Golden State Warriors technically would be a second apron team, but because Chris Paul's contract is a non-guaranteed contract, that kind of makes his contract a little bit more movable, and there's a lot more flexibility when it comes into play. So the Orlando Magic have all the cap space. They could totally be welcome. And in this particular scenario, they're taking on a $30 million contract that would come off their books. So they, really just would kind of be a wash for them if this is something that they wanted to do and be a part of. This is essentially just a trade between the Suns and the Warriors, and then the Magic are just kind of helping and filling the gaps. So it is technically a possible trade. It is technically something that the Suns could do. But is this trade actually possible? Is it something that the Suns will do? The answer at the end of the day, folks, it's no. This is not a trade that is actually going to happen. There's some key things that we need to figure out, especially like when you point out the fact that when you look at what the Orlando Magic are getting in return, the Suns are getting a first-round pick from the Orlando Magic, but the Orlando Magic aren't getting anything from the Phoenix Suns in this trade. So there's be no reason for Orlando to throw in a first-round pick to send to Phoenix. That's one thing when you look at this particular trade scenario. Now, granted, I just want to give Andy some slack. He did mention that, we can quibble about some of the smaller contracts. The big deal is the idea of getting Kevin Durant to Phoenix, or getting Kevin Durant to Golden State, rather, and getting some young growing talent like Kuminga, like Podziemski, to the Phoenix Suns. So let's just, keep that in mind when you're, analyzing this and when you guys are commenting below in terms of what you guys think about this trade scenario. But again, getting back to the reality of the situation, given what Matt Ishbia, what James Jones has said about keeping the big three together, I don't think Kevin Durant's going to be on the trading block, particularly not for something like this. I think for those guys, they would want to make a big splash. They would want to find a way to, if they were going to trade one of these big three, to make sure they're getting another big name in return. Matt Ishbia doesn't seem like the kind of owner that is willing to give up one of his major pieces to then bring back some building blocks and other smaller chess pieces, pawns, if you will, to help kind of look toward the future. Matt Ishbia is in win now mode. He's in championship or bust mode. And I would imagine that the Phoenix Suns are going to be making moves in that direction. This trade right here is more of a building block. Let's build for the future. Let's be a contender down the road after maybe some of these players like Kuminga and Podziemski develop, if we get them in our building. Now, does that mean that a trade like this is completely out of the realm of possibility? I would say no. I still think that there's a slim chance that they may look to make a move with a different member of the big three. That one probably being Bradley Beal. Now, that is difficult because Bradley Beal has no trade clause. He's not going to just want to go to a team that's, not contending for a championship. So that complicates things. So I don't think that even though they're telling us that the big three will stay together, and I believe that is the likelihood, I would be shocked if they weren't taking any calls on, what's Kevin Durant's availability, what's Devin Booker's availability, what's Bradley Beal's availability. I totally can understand and believe that the Phoenix Suns may look into the possibility of moving off the big three. And then again, looking back at this trade, is this something that the Golden State Warriors would do? Probably not. The cap implications in this trade don't include the fact that Klay Thompson's still would need to be re-signed, and the Golden State Warriors need to make a decision on that. Again, for the Orlando Magic, they're taking Chris Paul's expiring contract. They already have a load of point guards, so you're adding Chris Paul to Cole Anthony and Jalen Suggs, and then you're bringing Gary Payton II as well, who's also more of a combo guard. They would just fill that backcourt and really kind of lose a lot of their momentum that they've built after becoming a number 5 seed and making the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. So I don't really think that that's something that the Orlando Magic want to do. I don't know if they're just going to jump in and help two big-time teams in the Western Conference make a trade happen just because they got some cap space. I think the Orlando Magic are probably going to want to use that cap space to make a big move themselves to improve their team into the future. So realistically, even though cap-wise and money-wise, this trade could work, realistically, I don't think it's the kind of move that any of these three teams are going to want to make moving forward. So while it's fun to speculate and talk about and use these trade machines and just kind of, fantasy NBA, align our teams, this is not a realistic possibility for the Phoenix Suns. They're going to be making other moves on the margins to improve their team, veteran minimum stuff, minor trades, that don't necessarily bring in big names, but it is something that is fun to talk about, speculate on, and you guys can let us know in the comments below. Actually, would you like to see the Suns move off of Kevin Durant? Do you think Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Podziemski would be good additions to the team? And maybe they should take this, theoretical trade and make it a reality. You let us know in the comments below what you guys think. Again, this is Suns Digest. We are going to be breaking down everything going forward for the Phoenix Suns this offseason, news, trade, rumors, speculation like this. We're going to have it all for you here on Suns Digest. Again, my name is CJ Pierre. I will catch up with you guys next time, and go Phoenix Suns.